So, my daughter decided my villa was suddenly up for grabs, handing it over to her husband's family, declaring, "It belongs to them now. You're not welcome anymore." I forced a smile, pretending I wasn't fuming inside. Little did they know, I had something planned they would remember for years to come. Their faces were a portrait of shock. In one swift move, betrayal turned into payback, delivering the twist they never saw coming. I shut the car door with a bang, grabbing my weekend bag while dreaming of peace by the lake. A few days in my villa was just the ticket after a long week juggling San Diego properties. That drive, 2 hours from the city, was worth it for Lake Tahoe's serene beauty. But things were off. There were two figures in white robes on my terrace, steam rising from their coffee mugs. My daughter Kelly stood there, her dark hair catching the day's warmth. Her husband Palmer shifted uneasily, catching sight of me. "What's going on?" I murmured, my bag slipping from my frozen grip. Kelly shifted her weight, her face morphing into an expression I didn't recognize. Even at her toughest, she'd never given me such a frosty look. "Dad, you need to leave," she yelled, her voice cutting through the air. "Palmer and I are having a romantic weekend." I blinked, not comprehending. This was my villa. The deed had my name, bought with the earnings from years of developing half of San Diego. Elizabeth and I chose everything here together. "But Kelly, this is my place," I started to say, feeling foolish as the words tumbled out. "I don't care," she shot back, setting down her cup with a clatter. "We got here first and we're not leaving." Palmer said something I couldn't catch, but Kelly brushed him off. She tugged at her slipping robe irritably. "Sweetheart, it was a long drive here," I tried, moving towards the door. "All I want is a relaxing weekend." "Go away and quit bothering us," Kelly's voice rose. "You're just in the way." Her words hit like a punch. In the way? This was my refuge, the place where Elizabeth and I dreamed of growing old. It was where I felt connected to her. I stood there, stunned, my bag at my feet, facing my daughter's glare from my own home. Palmer wouldn't meet my eyes, awkwardly fidgeting, his face red. At 28, Kelly was treating me like an intruder in my own villa. The same girl who'd snuggle for bedtime stories, who called me daddy for years, who clung to me, grieving at Elizabeth's funeral. Her voice echoed in my mind. "Be patient with Kelly, Fred. She's still grieving. Give her time." 3 years. I'd been patient, flexible, and accommodating to her whims. And this was my thanks. "Okay," I mumbled bitterly. "Okay, I'll go." I bent to retrieve my bag, feeling my knees creak in protest. 62, and my own daughter was treating me like I didn't matter. "Good," Kelly shouted. "Next time, call first." Call first to use my own villa. I marched back to the car, each step a silent retreat from a battle I didn't know I had to fight. Behind me, I heard Kelly chatting with Palmer about dinner, as if I wasn't there. With a hum, the engine sprang to life, German efficiency at its best, unlike family, apparently. I backed out of the driveway, gripping the wheel until my knuckles whitened. In the mirror, I watched Kelly and Palmer settle back into their seats, already forgetting me. Kelly lifted her coffee, either toasting or waving goodbye. The road to San Diego stretched ahead, lonely and uninviting. I was returning, defeated, exactly as Elizabeth feared, and I always did. By the time Monday night rolled around, I found myself back in my study. Sitting with a mug of room-temperature coffee, I gazed at the remnants of last night's solo meal, unable to escape thoughts of recent events. It's been 3 days since the fiasco at the villa on Friday. Saturday was a constant state of alert, jumping every time the phone rang, hoping Kelly would reach out with an explanation. By Sunday, I began to grapple with a nagging feeling that maybe I've always been too quick to concede. Just then, the phone jolted me back to the present. Dad calling. Kelly's voice was cold, businesslike, not what I expected. "Here's the deal," she said. "Palmer and I have decided. The villa is now in his parents' name." I stopped, stunned, my coffee cup halfway to my mouth. Wait, what? Kelly? What's going on here? It's Carl and Margaret Thompson's now, she declared, each word landing like a blow. You're no longer welcome there. Leaning forward, my chair squeaked under me. Kelly, have you lost it? You can't just take away what's mine. Oh, I can, and I did, she retorted sharply. You barely use it, and they need a proper home. Flashbacks of 30 years of hard effort, dealing with permit challenges, difficult clients, and the dream Elizabeth and I had created of that lakeside home flooded me. That's my villa, I said, more forcefully than I expected. I spent 3 decades earning that place. Kelly's laughter was bitter. You're being so selfish. After everything we've done for you since Mom passed? Something shifted inside me at those words. Everything you've done? I covered your wedding costs, your car, your college loans, and your luxury apartment. That's what dads do, she cut in. Besides, you're old and alone. Why do you even need a big villa? Her words stung, but rather than breaking me, they gave me strength. In my mind, I could hear Elizabeth advising patience, but she never heard our daughter speak like this. Palmer's parents, Kelly? They're not my family. They're family now, and unlike you, they'll appreciate it. My grip tightened on the phone until my fingers were white. No. A tense silence stretched between us. I could almost feel Kelly's disbelief. What did you say? I said no, Kelly. The answer is no. You can't refuse me. Keeping the villa for yourself is a waste. Her mask slipped, revealing something harsher. Palmer's family needed a place while I supposedly let this property sit idle. It was bitterly ironic. I went there often after Elizabeth died, finding comfort in those old memories. Kelly knew this. They can solve their own housing problems, I responded, surprised at my calm. I can't believe how selfish you're being. Kelly's voice was shrill. Mom would be ashamed of you. That was the final straw. Elizabeth would never have approved of such manipulation. Your mother would be appalled at what you've become, I said quietly. I heard Kelly's shocked gasp as I hung up. It was the first time in 3 years that I had ended a call with my daughter. Sitting there with the silent phone, my heart pounded. Outside, San Diego's traffic droned on, but in my study everything felt forever changed. The phone rang immediately, Kelly's name glowing on the screen. I turned it off. Sleep eluded me that night. Long after midnight, I sat in my chair, replaying every harsh word. The silence carried a new tension, full of uncharted possibilities. By dawn on Tuesday, something had shifted within me. Coffee in hand, I grabbed my laptop and immersed myself in property laws with the same precise focus that built my construction business. I started revisiting old knowledge about California laws and regulations, never thinking I'd need them against my daughter. As the day passed, my phone buzzed non-stop with messages. Of course, all from Kelly. Dad, we need to discuss yesterday. Then, don't be stubborn about this. Finally, Palmer's parents are coming too. I'm planning a trip to the villa this weekend. For now, I'm ignoring the texts and wiping them clean without a word back. So, on Wednesday morning, I made my way to my lawyer's office downtown. Marcus Chen, who's been sorting out my business deals for the last 15 years, is a sharp guy with just the right balance of tact. His office sits on the corner of the building, and those huge windows offer a stunning view of sailboats drifting across the harbor. Fred? Marcus greeted me, rising from behind his shiny mahogany desk and offering a solid handshake. Good to see you. What brings you in today? I settled into the familiar client chair, the leather giving that same creak as always. I need some advice on protecting my property, I said. Marcus raised an eyebrow slightly, but his professional expression stayed solid. Are we talking about commercial or residential? Residential. The Lake Tahoe villa. I carefully chose my words. Someone's trying to claim what isn't theirs. Family member? That question hit hard, even though I was expecting it. Yes. Marcus nodded, his tone turning serious. That complicates things. Family property disputes can get messy quickly. What are my options? Quite a few, Marcus answered, grabbing a legal pad and jotting down notes. First, we need to ensure your ownership documents are airtight. Then, we might explore protective strategies like trusts or LLCs, depending on what suits your situation. How quickly can we get this sorted out? I asked. The basic document review is just a few days. More intricate plans could take 2 to 3 weeks. Kelly's text popped into my mind. Palmer's parents are visiting this weekend. I might not have that much time. Marcus put his pen down, focusing intently on me with the sharpness that makes him excel at his job. Fred, is there someone actually trying to push you off your property? His question carried weight, almost like an accusation. I nodded, and his professional poise shifted to genuine concern. Then let's get started immediately. I'll need every document you have, deeds, transfers, anything related to the villa's ownership history. I'll get them to you by tomorrow morning, I promised. Great, Marcus noted down. And Fred, make sure to document everything. Conversations, threats, coercion attempts. Keeping records makes a big difference. Threats, coercion, all legal terms for the mess my daughter was causing. In the elevator down to the parking garage, each floor felt like it was distancing me from the life I'd known just days ago. Once the elevator doors opened to the lobby, I caught my reflection in the shiny metal, a man appearing older than 62, but with a newfound drive in his eyes. As I reached my car, my phone rang. It was Kelly again, and this time I answered. Finally, she said, with the impatience of someone used to getting their way. We have to finally settle this. The only ridiculous thing here, I stayed calm, is you thinking you can take my property. Steal? Really, Dad, you're using that word on me? She shot back. What would you call taking someone's home without permission? There was a longer than usual pause from her side. This time, her voice was more calculated. Dad, Palmer's parents have money issues. Margaret got laid off, and Carl's pension barely covers anything. It was one of her usual tactics, playing on emotions when nothing else worked. That's unfortunate, but it doesn't give them rights to my villa. You could be kind, you know. Be a family person, she suggested, like the family spirit you showed when trying to take over the villa last Friday. Another pause. We didn't expect you to be there, at my property. You could have given a heads up. The circular reasoning made my head spin. Kelly, I'm not handing over the villa. That's final. Fine, she snapped. But Palmer's folks are still scheduled to come down this Saturday. Their travel plans are set. Silence followed. The call dropped suddenly. I stood by my car, phone still in hand, the dial tone ringing clearly. The sky over San Diego was wide and blue, watching over years of hard work building a life. Saturday was only 4 days away. The dial tone continued as I sat there, phone in hand, replaying Kelly's last words. Palmer's parents are still coming to look at it this Saturday, looking at it like it's already theirs. It felt like my home wasn't mine anymore. I gently placed the phone on the side table next to my cup of neglected coffee, which had long since gone cold and developed a thin layer on top. Out in San Diego, the evening traffic continued its usual buzz, but inside my study, it was like a different universe. How long had these feelings been lurking? When did I stop being Kelly's dad and become her personal bank? My mind flooded with memories, vivid and sharp. 2 years ago, Kelly's wedding came to mind. She'd asked for a bit of financial help, and I wrote a $15,000 check without hesitation, no questions about the details. She took it with such ease, like I was just a money machine, not a dad making a big sacrifice. Then came Palmer's car troubles 8 months later. Dad, we need reliable transportation, Kelly said, and that familiar tone told me another request was coming. So I shelled out $25,000 for a new SUV, delivered in a week. Palmer thanked me with a smile and a handshake, but Kelly hardly glanced up from her phone when I gave her the keys. Elizabeth's voice echoed in my head, a soft reminder from the past. Be patient with her, Fred. She's still dealing with my loss. But 3 years had passed since Elizabeth's death, and Kelly's processing seemed more like taking advantage of a father clinging to what remained of his family. I stood, my legs stiff from sitting too long. My study was a testament to past achievements: business awards, photos with clients, contracts from major construction projects. They painted a picture of a man who built a legacy with shrewd deals. So why was I rolling over at home? The explanation sat in a silver frame on my desk. It was a photo of Elizabeth taken during our last trip to the villa. She was laughing at me, her gray hair glowing in the Lake Tahoe light. Since she passed, I'd met all of Kelly's requests with agreement, fearing that saying no meant losing the rest of my family. But real family doesn't take advantage. Real family doesn't exploit grief for money. Kelly's grad school costs stacked up to nearly $40,000 over 2 years. I paid them all without questioning, even as she changed majors twice, dragging out her program. Her thank you calls dwindled in length and frequency, only resurfacing when she wanted something else. I always prided myself on recognizing patterns in negotiation, and her behaviors were a clear pattern. With each new request, her appreciation faded. Each conversation became more transactional, less familial. I thought I was being a good father, but really, I was just enabling her to view me as a cash source. The wall clock struck 8 o'clock, its ticking loud in the silent room. In just 4 days, Palmer's family would come to my villa, expecting to refashion the life I'd spent 30 years building. They'd likely arrive with measuring tape and furniture plans, ready to repurpose my hard work for their needs. Elizabeth's advice about patience had served well while Kelly was honestly grieving. But grief doesn't stretch over 3 years into trying to take someone's home after draining them financially. This wasn't grief. It was pure greed. I picked up Elizabeth's picture, absorbing her warm smile. She adored Kelly, but was also the disciplinarian. She wouldn't stand for this kind of disrespect, nor the dismissal of my emotions and rights. What should I do? I softly asked the photo. The answer came clearly, almost in my own voice. Stop allowing yourself to be taken advantage of. Sleep eluded me. I went through my routine, showering, brushing my teeth, browsing the sports section from the Sunday paper. But when I finally lay down at 11, my mind wrestled for peace. Thoughts kept racing. Instead of counting sheep, I counted the days. Monday, April 28th, Tuesday, the 29th, then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and finally Sunday, May 4th. After 6 nights of battling insomnia, I finally surrendered to the idea that sleep wasn't happening. Lying there on my back, hands resting under my head, I found myself staring at the ceiling, my mind crunching the situation like it used to handle construction contracts. Break it down, find the key steps, figure out the resources and timing. Where Kelly screwed up was giving me a deadline. In my 30 years of project management, I learned that the first one to disclose their timeline often loses in a negotiation. On Sunday, May 4th, I realized she was working backward from some fixed date, probably when Palmer's parents planned to move or a lease running out. When the digital clock showed 12:47 a.m., a plan started forming in my mind. This wasn't about feelings anymore. It was all about strategy, something I was good at. Over the years, dealing with difficult clients, tight deadlines, and contractors out for extra bucks had taught me valuable lessons about people and how to use leverage to an advantage. Rule number 1, never negotiate from desperation. Kelly thought I was desperate to save what we had. That was true for a while, but not anymore. Desperate men don't ignore their daughters or lawyer up. Rule number 2, knowing more than the other guy gives you the upper hand. Kelly was confident she had me pegged, the grieving widower who couldn't say no to his daughter. Only she didn't know about my conversation with Marcus Chen or the document reviews already in the works. Rule number 3, timing is crucial. To her, 6 days might seem rushed with no wiggle room, but for me, it was just enough time to plot a smart counter. I thought back to Frank Morrison, the developer who tried pulling a fast one on me during the Harbor District project in '98. He tried intimidation, legal threats, and spreading lies about my company. Familiar, right? I let him think he was winning while I quietly lined up deals with 3 of his top subcontractors. When his project crumbled, I was ready with premium solutions. It felt eerily similar. Kelly thought she was boxing me in. Instead, she was setting me up to flip the script. My phone buzzed. Another message from Kelly, of course. "Dad, Palmer's parents found a moving company for Sunday. Don't make this harder than it should be." Her bold assumption blew me away. She had movers lined up for my house. From a business angle, I had to admire her guts. Always act like the deal is already closed, even if you're bluffing. But I'd seen that trick before. Tony Castellanos tried it in 2003, showing up with architectural plans for a property that wasn't his. He got a pricey lesson in the gap between confidence and actual ownership. Kelly was about to get a similar wake-up call. I erased her message and put the phone aside. I started going over my options as methodically as when I turned a small contracting business into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Resources, timeline, desired results, and acceptable risks. My resources? Plenty of cash reserves, legal backing, 3 decades of business links, plus a secret weapon Kelly didn't know about, my neighbor Derek's tech prowess. Derek owed me for helping him when his basement got flooded last winter. Timeline: 6 days to roll out the plan with execution hitting the peak on Sunday. Desired results: not just knocking Kelly's plan off course, but flipping the power balance, making sure she learned not to treat me as a doormat. At 1:23 a.m., I chuckled softly. Elizabeth used to say I had a ruthless side that kicked in when someone pushed their luck. She saw it happen when competitors tried underbidding me with dodgy tactics or when suppliers broke contract terms. "You're too nice 95% of the time," she once pointed out. "But that other 5%? It's downright frightening." Kelly was about to meet that side of me. She hadn't really seen that fiery side of me before. She was in for a serious wake-up call. By 2 a.m., we had the basic plan sorted out. The next day, I'd chat with Derek about all the tech stuff. On Wednesday, it'd be time to hammer out the details with Marcus. Thursday and Friday would be dedicated to prepping everything. Saturday night, I'd make one last trip to Lake Tahoe, acting like the easygoing dad Kelly was used to. But come Sunday morning at the villa, she'd meet a totally different Fred Martinez, someone she'd never seen before. Tuesday morning, a sudden burst of clarity smacked me in the face like bold decisions tend to do. I woke up at 7 and felt more alive than I had in forever. Showered, made some coffee, and was knocking on Derek's door right at 9. Derek greeted me in his usual work-from-home gear, old jeans and a startup t-shirt. His eyes peered out from behind his wire-rimmed glasses, and he had that look of someone who'd been deep in code. "Fred, is everything okay?" he asked, leading me into his home office, where 3 screens were covered in code. "Actually, I could use your tech expertise for a creative project," I said, as I dropped into a chair by his desk, surveying the array of gadgets scattered everywhere. Derek's eyebrows shot up, genuinely intrigued. "What kind of project?" "You've got me curious," he replied. "Home automation. You know, with motion sensors, voice assistants, maybe some cool lighting effects," I explained while keeping an eye on him. "It's for some surprise guests." "Interesting," Derek said, turning to face me fully. "Like creating a smart, haunted house with a dramatic touch?" "Exactly. I want to make a real impression." Derek's smile was infectious. "Fred, that sounds like something out of a thriller. When do we get started?" 2 hours later, we were loading Derek's SUV with tech gear, gearing up for an experimental run. Motion detectors, LED strips, wireless speakers, hidden cameras, water controllers, and a tablet stocked with automation software. On the drive to Lake Tahoe, Derek rattled off possibility after possibility. We can orchestrate cascading responses. Motion triggers lights, lights activate sounds, sounds control water systems. The entire house could become an interactive spectacle. How far are we going? The sky's the limit, he replied with eagerness. I'm thinking motion sensors everywhere, custom voice messages, lighting that changes as people move. Derek was practically buzzing with excitement. We could even do facial recognition to pinpoint certain guests. Intriguing. Let's start simple and use any extra time wisely, I suggested. We arrived at the villa around noon. Derek was visibly impressed by the place, letting out a whistle. Fred, your mystery guests are in for quite the surprise. Derek's real talent shone through during the setup. He instinctively knew where to install sensors, identified the best camera angles, and started coding the control tablet. A motion sensor here at the entry, he said, installing a device about the size of a smoke detector. As soon as someone steps in, the living room lights go crazy, and the voice assistant announces, "You don't belong here. Leave immediately." And if they don't? I wondered, spotting the gleam in Derek's eyes. Phase 2, he chuckled. Any movement in the living room activates every faucet and shower, and the voice becomes more insistent, he explained. We powered through the afternoon, with Derek concealing cables, designing response sequences, and testing each element with precision, clearly relishing the task. I did what I could to help, utterly blown away by our creation. The beauty of this, Derek said, adjusting a hidden camera behind some books, is that it's all perfectly legal. Motion-activated lights, voice assistants, automated water systems, it's standard smart home stuff with a creative spin. By 3 hours, every room boasted at least 2 sensors, creating lighting effects that Derek dubbed intensely unsettling. He programmed the voice assistant for quite a performance. The setup was loaded with increasingly bold messages that would kick in whenever it detected ongoing activity. The house's plumbing would spontaneously kick to life the moment the motion sensors were tripped. "Let's give it a shot," Derek said, holding his tablet. "Step into the living room." As soon as I entered, the lights began to flicker frantically, and the voice assistant announced, "This is Fred Martinez's property. You're trespassing. Leave immediately." Derek appeared next to me, beaming. "Keep moving around." After about 30 seconds of walking, all the lights started strobing, and the voice shifted to, "Warning, security system activated. Authorities have been notified. Leave now." You could hear the rush of water flowing from the kitchen and bathrooms as all the faucets sprang open on their own. "Amazing," I said, genuinely impressed. "Totally amazing." Derek ended the test, looking as proud as ever. "The system's got a battery backup, so cutting the main power wouldn't work. Plus, you can control everything with your phone. You can check the cameras, switch settings, even trigger manual overrides." While packing up our things, Derek's curiosity took over. "So, when are your surprise guests arriving?" "Sunday morning," I replied. "They really have no idea what's coming." I recalled Kelly's text about hiring movers for my place. "Let's just say they think they're settling into my home." Derek laughed, the sound echoing through the empty villa. "Well, they're definitely in for a shock." On Wednesday morning, Derek showed up at my door at 8:30 with gear I hadn't seen before. His eyes sparkled like someone who'd spent the night cooking up fresh ideas for an already fantastic system. "I had some new thoughts," he said, holding a compact projector and speaker setup. "What if they try to cut the main power?" That was a concern, something I'd mulled over all night. "What's your plan?" I asked. "Industrial-scale batteries stashed in the basement. Enough juice to last a week," Derek answered with a contagious grin. "Plus, I've got projectors for wall effects like shadows and moving shapes. This will be something else." The drive to Lake Tahoe flew by as Derek filled me in on his updates. Motion-triggered spooky projections, sound systems with hidden speakers whispering through the house, backup power that'd make it nearly impossible to disable. "Your mystery visitors," Derek said as we pulled into the driveway, "are going to feel like they've walked into a haunted house flick." "Perfect." We jumped into setting everything up that morning. Derek installed projectors in the main rooms, arranging them to project moving shadows on walls and ceilings. Even in daylight, it was pretty creepy. Dark shapes seemed to glide behind furniture, shadows that flickered just out of view. The brilliance of this setup, Derek explained, while adjusting a wall-mounted unit, is its psychological impact. People look for patterns where none exist. These projections are going to make them see things that aren't there. Meanwhile, I concentrated on the audio part. Derek had brought in top-notch speakers, about the size of smoke detectors, and placed them all around. The sound library he'd assembled was genuinely eerie. Footsteps in deserted rooms, whispered voices, creaky floorboards, wind that seemed to come from nowhere. The system will randomly layer these sounds, Derek observed, tweaking the audio settings. Sometimes just one, sometimes a mix. It keeps them questioning what's real. By lunchtime, we had transformed the peaceful villa into something straight out of a psychological thriller. The backup battery system was cleverly concealed beneath the main power panel, ensuring everything would keep going even if someone tried to shut it down. What about a warning sign? I suggested over lunch. Something to set the stage as soon as they get here. Derek's eyes lit up. Great idea. How about, "Welcome to the house of the future. Enter at your own risk." Makes it sound like some high-tech experiment. We spent a good hour crafting a top-notch sign, making it look super professional and slapping it on the front door. To anyone strolling by, it might appear we're flaunting some slick smart home system. But for potential intruders, it was a clear warning about what they'd be stepping into. That afternoon was dedicated to thoroughly testing everything and fine-tuning the final settings. Derek meandered through each room while I monitored the control tablet, observing as motion sensors activated responses from all the systems. "We've got movement in the entryway," Derek called out. Lights switched on, the projector buzzed to life, and audio started blasting. The villa was alive with organized mayhem. Strobe lights flashed erratically, shadows danced on the walls, and the smart assistant issued a firm warning about trespassing, intertwined with creepy whispers. Faucets and showerheads across the house began gushing water. "How long will this show last?" I asked, genuinely impressed by how smoothly it all synced. "It continues as long as there's movement," Derek explained, grinning. "If they stand still or try to hide, there's a 30-second pause." We did final checks room by room, ensuring everything operated seamlessly. The projectors matched perfectly with the sound, and sensors covered every possible path through the house. Even the backup power units remained out of sight, but accessible for maintenance. As night approached, Derek configured the smartphone interface for remote monitoring. Live camera feeds, system updates, manual controls. I could manage everything from anywhere with an internet connection. "I've honestly never worked on anything this advanced," Derek admitted, reluctantly packing up his tools. "Your guests are going to be in for quite the surprise," he added. Standing at the doorway, I took one last look at our handiwork. The villa looked as it always did, peaceful and welcoming. But beneath its serene exterior was a high-tech system ready to meet unwanted visitors with unyielding intensity. "Thanks, Derek. This is just right." His laughter echoed through the empty villa as we locked up and headed to our cars. I almost pitied whoever decided to drop by on Sunday. Almost. On Sunday, May 4th, Kelly set the scene for her ultimate showdown. At precisely 2 EDAW, I settled in my study, eyes glued to 3 monitors displaying live streams from the villa. The serene Lake Tahoe afternoon seemed deceptively calm through the high-def cameras Derek had installed around my property. Birds fluttered amidst the pine trees, sunlight flickered on the lake, everything seeming typical with no hint of the complex tech network hidden beneath the villa's innocent surface. My phone sat next to the keyboard, showing the home automation app managing every system we had meticulously set up. Sensors were active, audio systems ready, lights programmed, water controls engaged, and projection systems on standby with their eerie effects. Every feature performed flawlessly during our test run on Wednesday. Now, it was showtime. At 2:28 p.m., a dark blue minivan appeared on the camera, heading down the approach road just as Kelly had promised. My daughter's punctuality had always been dependable, a benefit in school, a tool for leverage, and now perfect for orchestrating payback. "Right on schedule," I murmured, adjusting a monitor for optimal viewing. The van pulled into my driveway with the confidence of someone who believed they owned the place. Kelly got out first, her dark hair gleaming in the sunlight as she surveyed what she clearly believed was her family's estate. Palmer hopped out next and went to assist his folks with their luggage. Carl and Margaret Thompson looked exactly as I'd imagined, retired, a bit worn out, but brimming with the excitement of people who felt they'd received a surprise gift. Margaret clutched a sizable purse along with what seemed to be a pair of house slippers, ready to settle in as if it were her own home. They were at the back of the minivan, unloading suitcases and boxes like they were moving in permanently. It didn't resemble just a weekend visit. It felt more like a complete takeover of my villa. They exuded the assuredness of people who thought I was too powerless to do anything about it. Kelly excitedly gestured toward the front entrance while chatting with her in-laws. Even through the camera, you could sense the triumph and authority in her movements. Palmer nodded, occasionally glancing up at the windows, probably figuring out which room would be best for his parents. The four of them approached the front door as a solid group, fully convinced they had every right to my place. Margaret took the lead, ready to handle anything inside. Then they hit a roadblock. Derek had posted a sign by the entrance that said, "Welcome to the house of the future. Enter at your own risk." Clear letters and a perfectly legal warning. Margaret stopped and frowned at it, and you could hear her clearly through the audio Derek had set up nearby. "What's this? Who put this here?" she muttered. Carl joined her, squinting at the sign. "Probably just some silly joke." "Ignore it, Maggie," he suggested. Kelly giggled. "Oh, that's just Dad being quirky. He probably thought it was funny. Just ignore it," she reassured them. Palmer shrugged and reached for the door handle. "He's always been a bit eccentric," he added, but Margaret wasn't having it. Angry, she yanked the sign off the wall. Derek's neatly done work was undone in seconds, the sign hitting the ground. "There," she said, kicking it aside. "No silly warning on our first day here." Kelly clapped. "Perfect," she said. "This is your house now, Margaret." I watched them step over the sign and head toward the door on my camera feed. They'd just blatantly disrespected my property and my attempt to set boundaries. They were clearly warned, but they just didn't care. Palmer used a key Kelly probably copied from a spare I once trusted her with. The door unlocked easily, and my daughter escorted Palmer's parents over the threshold like she was claiming new territory. "Make yourselves at home," Kelly announced, her voice echoing. "This is your place now." Margaret let out a delighted sigh. "It's even more beautiful inside, Kelly. I can't believe how easy this was. Some people are such pushovers," she said. The motion sensors detected their presence as red indicators lit up on my monitoring system. 4 visitors now inside the villa. All the tech systems were ready to go at a moment's notice. I smiled, finger poised over the smartphone that would teach them a lesson on respecting others' property. Not yet, I thought. Let them settle in first. Right at 10:40, I watched through the bedroom camera as Kelly and Palmer drifted off to sleep, believing they'd claimed their master bedroom. In the guest room, Carl and Margaret were already snoozing, exhausted from their day of taking over my place. It was the perfect time for a wake-up call. I hovered my finger over the master control Derek had set up on my phone, ready to activate all the villa's systems. Motion sensors ready, audio sequences prepped, projection systems activated, and water controls in place. It was time for my daughter to learn the hard way that I'm no pushover. I'm a strategist. I hit the execute button, and the transformation was immediate and glorious. The villa's lights started flickering in sync, with rapid red, blue, and white flashes turning the tranquil bedrooms into bewildering disco scenes. At the same time, water shot out of every tap and shower, filling the house with a loud roar. Kelly jolted awake, her shadow visible in the chaotic lights. Next to her, Palmer was stumbling around, both of them shouting questions drowned out by the explosive tech chaos. Then the voice assistant chimed in. "Alert! Unauthorized intrusion detected." Its voice boomed throughout the villa. "You are not the owners. Leave immediately." From the guest room camera, I watched Carl and Margaret flail out of bed, terrified. Margaret's scream pierced through the noise as shadowy figures started gliding across the walls, ghostly and deliberate. "Carl, do something!" Margaret cried out, her voice cracking with fear. "I have no idea what's happening," Carl managed to say over the rushing water and flashing lights. Derek's programming was truly a piece of art. It made everything click into place seamlessly. Motion sensors picked up their frantic dashes from room to room, setting off more alerts and amping up the visual drama. The more they moved, the angrier the house got. Kelly showed up on the hallway camera, looking frazzled and totally shocked. "This isn't possible. Houses don't behave like this," she yelled. Palmer followed closely, aiming for what he hoped was the main control panel. "Where's the fuse box? We need to shut everything down." But even if they found it, Derek's backup systems were all set to go for days without a hitch. The villa had turned into an independent fortress, listening only to my remote instructions. "Warning, security protocols activated," the assistant repeated. "Unauthorized occupants will be removed." Margaret was now in the living room, looking terrified as projection shadows played around her. "This place is haunted. We need to leave." Just as Palmer reached the front door, the lock sequence started. A 30-second delay by Derek wouldn't trap them, but it certainly added a claustrophobic layer. Palmer was yanking on the door handle like a madman. "The doors won't open. What kind of system is this?" It was amusing watching all four of them, who had so boldly barged into my place, now scared and confused by tech they couldn't master. Kelly, who thought ignoring me was a breeze, was now tripping over shadows while hidden speakers whispered around her. Palmer, who had come to fix his parents' issues with my villa, couldn't even figure out a smart lock. As planned, the projection systems maxed out, covering the walls with figures that seemed to follow their frantic movements. The surround sound effects, footsteps, creaks, imagined wind, turned the villa into a tech-enhanced haunted house. Carl dropped into a chair, looking ghostly pale under the flashing lights. "We need to leave now," he insisted. "I'm trying," Palmer snapped, still wrestling with the door. Exactly 6 hours after the sequence began, it reached its peak. Every system, the lights, water, sounds, projections, and warnings, all synchronized, creating a sensory overload designed to drown out rational thought. Kelly stood right in the middle of the living room, spinning helplessly as shadows darted around and water appeared to erupt out of nowhere. The confident woman who had tried to order me off my land now looked trapped in a high-tech nightmare. As the first light of day started to filter through, the locks finally released. Palmer flung the door open, and they all dashed out, mentally worn out. Just as they reached their minivan, my phone buzzed with Kelly's name on the display, exactly at 7:30, breaking the morning stillness. The tranquility in my study was disrupted when Kelly's name popped up on my phone. I couldn't help but smirk a little before answering, layering my voice with just enough concern. "Morning, Kelly. How was your night at the villa?" Her anger sliced through the air like a knife, her voice strained and frantic. "What did you do, you sick, twisted old man?" Her voice sounded exhausted. She went on to describe how Margaret and Carl were barely able to speak. I pretended to be puzzled, trying to sound gentle. "Kelly, what are you even talking about? Did something go wrong?" Her fury was thick, seeping through every syllable. "Don't act like you don't know. The house went berserk. Flashing lights, water pouring everywhere, voices yelling at us to get out." I found it fascinating. Derek's plan worked even better than I'd imagined. That must have been terrifying, I said, letting a touch of genuine concern wash over my voice. Did you call for help? We contacted the police, she admitted, her voice breaking. They arrived by 6 a.m., checked everything out, and called it a glitch. Smart home tech at its best, I mused to myself. Perfectly innocent and untouchable. Well, that's a relief, I replied. At least there wasn't an actual danger. An actual danger? She screamed so loudly I had to pull the phone away from my ear. We didn't get a wink of sleep for 8 hours. Carl fainted twice, and Margaret hasn't stopped crying. I clucked sympathetically, feigning regret. I'm truly sorry for your ordeal. Today's tech can be so unpredictable. Please don't patronize us, she implored, her voice tinged with desperate music. We both know this wasn't just a random glitch. Kelly, I said, trying to sound worried, you seem really stressed. Maybe the house just doesn't appreciate strangers. The silence felt like it dragged on forever. When Kelly finally replied, her voice was low and dangerous. I know this was your doing. You set up this whole mess. I laughed a bit. Me? Kelly, I was in San Diego all night. How could I run anything from 200 miles away? Her voice had a hint of sarcasm. So now you're a tech genius? Actually, Derek was the one with tech skills, but I didn't think it was necessary to mention my connections. Honey, you know I'm barely good with a remote, I said softly. She took shaky breaths, trying to match her doubts with reality. The police said everything was okay. See, I remarked, probably just a power surge or something. A power surge for 8 hours, with voices and shadows? I feigned concern. Kelly, could you have imagined some of it? Stress can really play tricks on you. Hallucinations, she yelled. 4 people having the same exact ones? Mass hysteria is a real thing, I suggested, hearing her sob over the phone. For years, I was the one calling her, looking for understanding, only to be ignored. Seeing the situation flipped was strangely satisfying. We're never coming back, she declared, trying to sound strong. Never. Keep the villa. We don't want it. That's smart, I responded casually. Homes sometimes have moods, especially when they feel invaded. You can't get away with this forever, she said. We'll find a way to prove it was you. Prove what? I questioned. That you had a technical glitch? Her silence was so long I thought she hung up. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. I underestimated you. You misjudged a lot, Kelly. This isn't over, she promised. Actually, I spoke softly, I think it is. You wanted a night in my villa. Hope it taught you something. After that, she hung up. I leaned back, setting my phone down beside the monitors, showing the now empty villa. Years on construction sites taught me the simplest answers often work best. Kelly tried mind games and emotional tactics to steal my property, but I countered with better tech and well-timed patience. As soon as I turned my phone on, it rang again, Kelly's name on the screen. I chose not to answer. Tuesday morning arrived, and my plan went just as expected. Watching from the villa's surveillance, I saw Palmer's rental truck pull into my driveway at 10 Gao on the dot, filled with locksmith tools and false confidence. Sitting in my San Diego study, I watched him head for the front door, thinking new locks would solve their issue. But the locksmith's face turned puzzled before he even started with Derek's intricate security system. In half an hour, both men stood there confused. These are not regular locks, the locksmith stated, his voice clear over the audio feed. They're part of a sophisticated smart system with biometric scanners, wireless links, and backup power. Palmer's mood soured as he stared at the setup. Can't you just change them? He inquired. Not without overhauling the whole security system, the locksmith replied, already packing up. It's beyond me. You'd need a tech specialist. Derek Collins was the only one within 200 miles who knew this specific system inside out. Mentally, I thanked him for his stellar work again. Once the locksmith left, Palmer lingered alone at the villa's entrance, clearly defeated. I watched through the camera as he kicked the doorframe in frustration before heading back to San Diego. The rest of my Tuesday was pleasantly calm. Kelly would hear about Palmer's failure by 4 hours. As nightfall came, they'd get desperate enough to confront me directly. 3 decades in the construction business taught me to recognize when adversaries realized they'd been outplayed. By 8 a.m., the sound of car doors slamming outside signaled their approach. From my window, I saw Kelly and Palmer storming towards the front door, every step heavy with frustration. Kelly hammered on the door, practically shouting, "Open up! We've got to talk!" I answered with a composed demeanor, observing her flushed cheeks and Palmer's stiff posture. "Hey there, how's your day been?" I greeted them. "Drop the pretense," Kelly snapped, barging past me. "Palmer couldn't swap the locks because you've turned this place into a fortress." "Smart home security is all the rage these days," I said with a cool smile. "Keeps the unwanted company at bay." Palmer leaned in, trying to tower over me. "Quit the games and hand over the villa, or forget about seeing your daughter," he threatened. "Is that some kind of threat or a promise?" I wondered aloud. Kelly's eyes burned with anger. "We'll take you to court. We'll sue for harassment and emotional distress," she declared. "What are you going to base that on?" I asked, unfazed. "The police found nothing wrong." "You know exactly what you did," Kelly accused, her voice faltering a bit. "You masterminded the chaos, and we'll prove it." I leaned casually against the door. "Prove that it was more than a technical hiccup," I said. "Good luck with that." "Fred, come on." Palmer tried the soft approach. "You're by yourself and getting older. Why hang on to such a big house?" He echoed Kelly's words from an earlier conversation. Their rehearsed lines were painfully predictable. "That's quite a perspective from people trying to grab my property," I noted. Kelly finally snapped. "Fine, play hardball, and you'll never meet your grandkids. My kids won't know you. You'll end up alone and forgotten like Mom." Mentioning Elizabeth should have stung. A few years ago, it would have shattered me, leaving me apologetic and broken. Instead, it confirmed what I'd come to understand about my daughter's nature. Just like you forgot to ask before trying to take the villa. "You're not done," Kelly's voice shrilled. "We'll destroy you, ruin your reputation until you wish you'd just handed over the villa." Palmer nodded vigorously. "She's right. We've got contacts. We'll make your life miserable." I scanned their faces with a detached look. Kelly, my daughter, whom I'd supported all along, now threatened to destroy me because I wouldn't give up my lifelong accomplishments. Palmer, my son-in-law, was threatening social chaos to yank my house away. "Are you done?" Kelly moved closer, malintent on her face. "We're only beginning. You have no idea what we're capable of." "Oh, I have a very clear idea." Their tactics included mind games, theft, and personal attacks, but they had already played all their cards, and here I was, still standing. More importantly, they just handed me all the motivation I needed for the steps I'd considered since yesterday's call. "Well," I said softly, "we'll see who's stronger." Something in my voice made Palmer take a step back. Kelly paused, possibly realizing her threats had backfired. "We're leaving," she declared, trying to regain control. "But this isn't over." "As a matter of fact," I replied, watching them head to their car, "I think it is." I closed the door behind them and returned to my study, where Elizabeth's photo smiled from my desk. The next day, I'd be making a few calls. Marcus Chen first, then a few others. Kelly thought she knew how to fight a battle. She was about to learn the difference between employing tactics and crafting strategy. Wednesday morning rolled around, culminating in the moment I'd been preparing for since Kelly's initial call. At 10 a.m., I sat in Bradley Walsh's conference room, watching my daughter and her team stride in, exuding the confident air of people convinced they held the winning hand. Bradley, my notary for the past 15 years, had all the documents ready, just like I'd asked the night before. Legal papers were spread across the table like evidence at a trial, and in many ways, that's what it was. Kelly sat across from me, determination etched on her face. "Okay, Dad, let's settle this villa issue once and for all." Palmer stood next to her, arms crossed in what he probably imagined was an imposing pose. Carl and Margaret Thompson took seats along the wall, expressions tinged with hope and residual anxiety from the technology fiasco on Sunday. "Thanks everyone for coming," I said evenly. "Bradley has some critical information to share." Kelly's eyes squinted. "Let's skip the niceties. We need Palmer's parents to take over the villa immediately. No more stalling." I shook my head. "That's just not possible." Palmer leaned in, looking agitated. "Nothing's impossible if you just sign the paperwork. We've waited long enough." "That's not the issue here," I replied, gesturing towards Bradley, who cleared his throat like a true professional. "The villa isn't mine anymore." A heavy silence filled the room for a moment. Kelly's expression changed, turning a different shade. "And what does that mean?" Palmer questioned. Bradley opened a folder in front of him. "Mr. Martinez has transferred ownership of the Lake Tahoe Villa to the Second Chance Foundation for Homeless Assistance. The paperwork was completed Monday morning and it's all legal." Kelly's response was sharp, almost breaking. "That can't be true. You had no right." "I had every legal right to do what I wished with my property," I said calmly. "It's all official, and there's no going back." Palmer's bravado faded. "But we had an agreement. Kelly assured us the villa would be ours." Bradley maintained his steady professionalism. "Mr. Martinez could only transfer what he owned, and now the foundation owns the villa." Kelly jumped up, her chair scraping against the floor. "You can't do this to us. We relied on that villa." "You were trying to get it improperly," I pointed out. This was starting to feel like... Margaret Thompson looked bewildered. "So what happens to us now? Where will we live?" I told her they'd need to find another solution, just as she tried to oust me from my home. Kelly's hands trembled as she gripped the edge of the table. "This is just vindictive. Pure revenge." I held her gaze and replied, "It's justice. I'm done with it." Palmer's face went white as he realized the financial chaos it stirred. Our future, it's ruined. We were relying on the villa. "Maybe you should have asked first," I suggested. Bradley laid out more documents. The donation includes a clause that allows Mr. Martinez lifetime usage of the villa. He can live there until he passes away. Kelly's tone edged on shrill. "So nothing's different for you?" "Everything's different," I corrected. "You have no claims, ever." Carl Thompson, silent until now, seemed at a loss. "So after everything, we end up with nothing," he said. "You tried to take what was mine with mind games and threats," I confirmed. "Exactly." Kelly sank back into her chair, realizing the shift. "When did you do this?" she asked. "Monday morning, just after your whole tech stunt," I said. The timing hit her hard. It was post-Villa fiasco and pre-confrontation at my place. Every one of their threats had been meaningless. Palmer muttered, "You planned this all along." "I always intended to protect my property from people like you trying to take it with deceit." Kelly stared at the documents as if sheer will could erase them. "This charity thing, it's just a trick, right? A way to keep control?" Bradley responded for me. "The Second Chance Foundation is legitimate. The property handover is final." Palmer was sour. "So you win. Is that what you wanted to hear?" "I'd have preferred hearing nothing from you all," I replied. "But given the circumstances, yes, I win." Kelly lost her composure. "You've destroyed our plans. Palmer's parents have no home now." "They can find any place, just not my villa," I said. Margaret Thompson sobbed quietly, while Carl tried to console her with clumsy, ineffective gestures, like he never saw how it came to this. Kelly struggled to her feet, her earlier bravado now replaced by a clear sense of defeat. "Let's just leave. There's nothing more to discuss." As they made their way to the exit, I couldn't resist adding a final note. "Kelly?" She paused, looking worn out and still seething. "Just remember, the next time you try pulling strings, smart business sense always trumps emotional blackmail." The door clicked softly behind them. Bradley and I sat in silence, surrounded by papers that marked the end of a battle I never wished for. "You really nailed that plan, Fred," Bradley eventually commented. "Spending 30 years in construction, you learn to always have a backup," I replied, collecting my papers and moving towards the door. A getaway to Lake Tahoe was in order, to finally savor the peace of my villa. Thursday morning brought the first sunrise in 3 years that I could enjoy without feeling anger, fear, or the need to strategize. Cruising through California's vibrant spring landscape on the way to Lake Tahoe, I was reminded of a feeling I'd almost forgotten: plain contentment. The villa welcomed me like an old friend, undisturbed and fully mine again. A twist of the key, no backward glances, entering without straining to hear hostile tones, and moving through rooms that had recently echoed with tech-driven strife, but now felt serene. My main priority was restoring the place. I had Derek's cameras down in no time. Their fancy mounts were no match for basic tools and some resolve. I carefully dismantled motion sensors, voice assistants, and projection systems, each element from our retaliatory efforts, meticulously packed for return to a helpful neighbor. In just 2 hours, the villa returned to its natural state. No flashing lights, no hidden mics, no high-tech surveillance watching over things. The solitude settled in quietly. A peaceful lakeside house, once owned by a charity, now providing sanctuary for someone who no longer had to guard against his own kin. I brewed coffee in the same machine that stood witness to the chaos of Sunday, taking my mug to the terrace where Elizabeth and I had relished many tranquil mornings. The lake stretched out before me, its surface catching the late morning sun and reflecting it in shimmering patterns that spoke of opportunities, not threats. For the first time since my wife passed, I sat perfectly at peace. The shift in feeling was almost miraculous in its completeness. It was hard to believe I was the same crushed widower from 3 years ago, confusing love with surrender, mistaking kindness for vulnerability, and assuming family loyalty meant tolerating pain. Even though I had built a construction giant from the ground up, I had somehow lost sight of defending my personal limits. Elizabeth's advice resonated with me now, clearer than ever, freed from the haze of grief or deceit. "Be patient with Kelly," she would say. "She's dealing with her grief." But Elizabeth's idea of patience never meant enduring endless sacrifice. She never equated love with accepting deceit, pressure, and mental suffering. The woman who married a spirited entrepreneur would never want him to become spineless, even for their daughter. Without self-respect, kindness isn't truly kindness, I declared to the empty terrace. It's weakness disguised as virtue. The surrounding mountain peaks seemed to nod in agreement. Nature showed how to maintain boundaries. The water stayed within its banks, the mountains stood firm, and the seasons shifted to their own rhythms, regardless of human desires. For 3 years, Kelly tested my boundaries, realizing they could be bent, erased, even disregarded altogether. With every successful ploy, she believed love meant surrendering, that family ties ensured unfettered access to my resources. My actions reinforced her beliefs. Every check written, every demand met, every time I opted for short-lived peace over lasting respect. Although our digital counterattack was gratifying, it wasn't essential. The real triumph lay in something simpler and more enduring: learning to say no. Understanding that safeguarding myself wasn't harsh, but necessary. Realizing that some relationships can't withstand the true establishment of boundaries. My phone hadn't made a peep all day. No urgent messages from Kelly, no aggressive texts from Palmer, and no sneaky attempts to mess with the charity transfer. They finally caught up to what I had figured out in Bradley's office. It was over, and they'd lost big time. But their loss wasn't the best part. It was like a new beginning for me. The grieving widower who confused manipulation for love was gone. Instead, there was a guy who remembered his worth, who understood that real kindness takes strength, not weakness. Elizabeth would be proud, not of the revenge part, but of the self-respect, of becoming someone who knew protecting yourself is a form of love. Love for her memory, for his self-worth, and for the possibility that relationships based on respect might still be out there waiting. The afternoon sun warmed my face as I finished my coffee, thinking about the weird math of family. Kelly thought she could use emotional games plus money troubles to access my resources whenever she wanted. She never realized that trauma plus time plus a bit of strategy could turn me into a father who finally got how to protect himself. The never-ending peace of Lake Tahoe mirrored a truth I was finally ready to accept. Some battles don't end with everyone coming back together, but with understanding that peace sometimes requires space. Some love shows itself through setting boundaries, not giving in. For the first time in 3 years, I felt like me again.